This is TWiT.
Well, let's start. Jason is wearing sky blue.
Sky blue. Sure.
I think you wrote that, well, I'll have to see it in person because it's probably just silver. And? Is it?
I mean, you tell me.
Yeah, that's silver.
It
with
is.
a little bit of blue. Doesn't match your shirt.
So here's the, it does not match my shirt because my shirt has color in it. Okay, so here's the deal. When Apple told me that they're doing this in our briefings that we had while I was poolside, they said,
you didn't have to go to the briefing.
Sky blue, and I'm like, oh, okay, all right, sky blue. And I thought to myself, it's going to be what they do, which is it's going to be silver with a hint of blue, like everything else. And then I got it, and I opened the box, and I thought to myself, I can't believe that they do this sky blue product and they send me a silver MacBook. And so I went back to the manifest from the Apple editorial reviews group, which lists all the specs of the model that they're shipping to you. And it says sky. And I thought, okay. And so I pulled out a silver MacBook and like my silver Apple TV remote, and I put it all together. And you know, it's not the same as silver, right? And at certain angles, and I mean, Apple's art that they supplied people that they posted when they did the press release, like they usually are on a neutral kind of off-white background. All their photography is not quite white, which bugs me because my website's background is white. And so you get a little off-white box around it that sometimes I remove in Photoshop because it makes me so mad. Anyway, this time it was like off-white blue. It was like trying to push your brain toward the blue. The truth is, yeah, I mean, in certain light, in certain angles, you can see that there's blue. But the way I would really describe it is there's silver. And then for starlight, there's a kind of yellow gold undertone that comes out a little bit. And then, so that's over here. In the middle is silver. And on the other stretch, now we have sky blue, which is that same silver, but with a little blue undertone to it. It is incredibly subtle. And as somebody who would really like Apple to take a shot at making a MacBook Air in a bright color just to see what that would be like, they're not going to do that. And I think they just philosophically believe that that laptop colors should be restrained because you never know where you're going to be using a laptop. I understand the argument, right? It's like you don't know what context it's going to be in. If you want to take it into a business meeting and it's bright orange, you're going to be making waves. If you walk into a Starbucks, everybody's going to be like, check out that guy with a green laptop, whatever it is. I get it. I wish they would try it though, because it would be more fun. And it's a MacBook Air. It's a consumer laptop. Why not let people, they do it with the iMac for Pete's sake. Why not try it with a laptop? Anyway, they didn't do that. Instead, it is sky blue, which is basically bluey silver instead of silver or goldy silver.
3 shades of silver.
And then, well, even the midnight is, which is the fourth option because they got rid of space gray.
I have a midnight.
The midnight. I have a midnight too, and it's beautiful, but it's basically a black laptop that, if you look at it at a certain angle, sort of seems blue. So it's like the inverse of these, but also kind of the same philosophy.
Show me again. Show me. Let's see it, so we can really. Yeah, I see a little blue. Did you, when you took it out, did you say, funny, you don't look bluish?
I literally thought they sent me a silver laptop.
Okay.
And I thought to myself, I bet they didn't. I bet this is what sky blue is. Funny. And because that's the truth of it, is out of context, it just seems like a silver laptop. And I think that's what they were going for. I think they want it to be subtle because I think Apple believes the standard laptop look for Apple is a silver laptop, and that they should all sort of be like space gray is really just out of context. You might think space gray was silver because it's also just silver, a little darker. So I think that Apple really philosophically thinks their laptop should be more or less silver or black. Maybe we're getting some of those dark gray now, and that's it. And like, I don't agree with it, but I at least understand they clearly got bitten culturally by the G3 iBook back in the day with the tangerine and the blueberry and all of that. And they have not made a colorful laptop since. So, I mean, I wish they would try.
That's too bad.
But really they didn't try this time.
And that's really too bad, too, because unlike a phone, you don't complain about a phone because, hey, you're just going to slap it into a case anyway. But now, like with the thermals on modern notebooks are so bad that you really can't put a plastic case over it unless you want to choke the damn thing.
Put a translucent case, which I like to do, or transparent case.
I mean, those stickers from D-Brand and what are kind of cool, but it's like, you want more customization.
If you want to personalize your MacBook MacBook Air, you should put stickers on it. I mean, that's basically, look at my daughter's laptop. It's covered in stickers. And it's like, okay, you could do that. That's great. But it's the most exciting thing, Leo, to change the subject slightly is.
Well, I just want, I know what you're going to say, and I just want to say this. The color is the least interesting thing. And it's the thing we led with.
But it's one of the few things that changed in this. There are only a couple of changes in this model.
There's a big change, which is the price.
Yes, that is so. The story.
And I think this is the story.
I agree. What happens is when you use new hardware, it's more expensive to make, and then over time it becomes less expensive to make. And this is always true, right? You build something first, and all the parts add up to costing $1,000, and then in a year they all cost $980, and in 2 years they cost $950. It just over time the price comes down, your margins can go up, and so Apple believes firmly that the Air should start at $999. That is they want a sub $1,000 laptop. And when they went to the M2, they couldn't do it. The M2 Air started at, I want to say $1299. It was not cheap. It might have been $11, but it was not $999. They kept the M1 around. And then when the M3 came out, they moved the M2 Air down to $999 because it was a year old. It was an old model, but the new MacBook Air still couldn't cost. It was I think $1199, $1099, something like that. It was not there. With the M4, they finally gotten back to it. So it took them 2.5 years, almost 3 years, but they are back to the fact that for $999 you can get a base model, and now it's got 16 gigs of RAM instead of 8. It's 256 storage, which for people who watch MacBreak Weekly is probably not enough, but for a lot of people is fine if you're doing mostly stuff in the cloud anyway.
And 16 gigs RAM, right?
And the 16 gigs RAM is huge, and that's at $999. And what it does for me, I'm curious. I'm going to work in the boys here. I'm curious what Andy and Alex and Leo think about this.
He's busy on his taxes.
I'm trying to work him into the conversation. I'm listening. But for me, this eliminates a whole raft of things where it used to be, what Mac should I buy? And I'd be like, well, because the M1 Air, it was clear it was the M1 Air. But in the M2, M3 Air, it's like, well, that M2 Air is a year old, but it's a pretty good deal at $999. All that. It's all wiped away, and they stopped selling those models, except in certain countries. But basically, they're gone off of Apple.com. The answer is, just get the $999 M4 Air. It is the easy default Mac to recommend to almost everybody, and that is the most impressive thing about the new MacBook Air.
100%. I've always thought that it's really important for Apple to have a sub $600 Mac Mini, better sub $500. I'll take sub $600, but it's also really, really important for them to have a sub $1,000 MacBook. Even if they have to cut some of the features of it, even if they have to cut some of the storage of it, the entry price should not break $1,000, because there are people that consider themselves lucky to be able to get the base model MacBook Air. So this was a really, really big deal. And the second effect of that is that one of the things that sort of perplexed me for the past couple of years has been, when you send somebody into an Apple store, how do you sell them the difference between a MacBook Pro and a MacBook Air if they're not getting the base model? If they are willing to spend $1,300-$1,400, by the time when the base model Air was a couple $100 more, it's like, here are two nearly identical MacBooks. One has a fan, one does not. One is a little bit thicker, but it's only a big deal if you wish you had room for one extra paper comic book in your laptop bag than not. This puts extra distance between the two and makes it really, really clear. It's still, here's the one that is maybe your second. You have a Windows machine at home, or you have an iMac at home, but you have a portable Mac to go. This is the one to go for, even if you're not necessarily using it as your primary Mac. So this is it adds clarity to the product line.
I agree. I think that it is a. I think what's interesting there is that the price makes a difference. Also, it's very clear between the Mac Pro. I just got a Mac Pro a couple of weeks ago for the Michael Krasny show that we're doing, and we got the Mac Pro because of the USB. I just need more USB inputs, but that's a Pro request, right? That's a Pro request. It makes sense to be a Pro. You mean
the MacBook Pro, right?
MacBook Pro, yeah. So I got the MacBook Pro because I wanted 4 inputs. I didn't want the 2 that the Air comes with. But it was very clear. Like, and it was like, oh, I can see that. I know what the difference is because I have a pro need. If I wasn't recording things, if I didn't need to plug in mics and other things to it, I would absolutely have gotten the Air.
Yeah,
and especially at $999.
The price differential. So even if you go to the 15 model, which is $1199, like the M4 base MacBook Pro 14-inch is $1599.
Right.
It's the same chip, right? But it's got that really nice screen, and it's got more ports, and it's got a bunch of stuff. So there's a very clear, which there,
Right.
Andy is absolutely right. There was not before. There is a very clear reason why the M4 Pro exists, M4 MacBook Pro exists, and why the M4 MacBook Air exists. They're different products. There's a big price difference between them. You understand why you choose one or another. And again, for people like us, we get asked all the time, what Mac should I buy? My kid's going to college. What should I buy? Like, it happens all the time. And there have been periods where it's been zero clarity about what to do. You gotta do a whole questionnaire, and you're like, well, do I need whatever? And I love a moment like this where it's like, no, you can get the best chip, the current model, $999 to start. If you want to add a little more storage, go ahead. $1199 if you want to get the 15-inch model. Like, it's already was a great computer, and in an era where we have inflation and a lot of prices are going up, Apple has pushed that thing back down to $999 to start. Now, if you want to spec it up, Apple will reap all the rewards of huge margins and all the up spec. But the fact is, $999 for an M4 Air with 16 gigs of RAM and a 256 SSD, still pretty great. And if you want to update that
student machine,
I mean,
right?
it is.
That's the machine you should get a student.
Yeah,
this is this would be my standard if my kid's going to college. What do I get them? It's the $999 M4 Mac.
Especially since nowadays they store most of their stuff in the cloud anyway.
Yep.
You don't need more than 256, I think.
I think so. I mean, unless
most stuff.
unless you're working on graphic. I mean, like, the people who need more will know, but like
and even then, you get an
price.
External drive. You're better off keeping your media on an external drive anyway.
Yeah, why not?
So,
It's a great deal. It is. It's funny because we do a lot of parsing of like, well, what's Apple doing here and who's this for and all that. It's kind of refreshing to be just like, yeah, this is it. Like,
this is the
almost.
one, right?
I mean, because
it
almost everybody buys a laptop.
Isn't it? It
is the best-selling Mac. I looked it up. We don't know how many laptops Apple sells out of versus desktops because they don't report that anymore. The last year they reported that was, I think, fiscal 12, and I looked up that number. I did my research. 75% of the Macs they sold in 2012 were laptops, and it's not less.
Yeah.
And then this is by far their most successful laptop. Maybe, they make a lot of profit on the MacBook Pros, but they sell. And if you talk to somebody in an Apple store, they'll tell you that, an iMac or a Mac Mini might go out the door every so often, but the MacBook Airs just fly off the shelves because it is the definitive Mac right now. And
for anybody who wants a computer, that's probably the computer to get.
Pretty fuss-free concept of $999. You get an M4 Mac, and you'll be able to use it. That's the other thing. Apple keeps comparing these things to Intel. You're going to use this thing. You can use this thing for 7-8 years, no problem. Honestly.
Yeah.
And one of the things that kind of is making me wonder, gee, I know my M1 MacBook is still running fine. I have no complaints about it, but maybe I should buy a MacBook Air. Just the simple fact that now you can actually have two external displays plus the internal display at the same time. Because for me, the difference between a real desktop replacement is having two actual external displays at the same time. That's pretty big. That's a really nice bonus.
I gotta say, it's a little annoying though that Apple still, or now, puts Apple Intelligence in this specs everywhere. Like, that's something.
Yeah.
We'll
get to that in a bit.
They have corporate alignment on Apple Intelligence as a feature that they want to promote almost everywhere.
If you want to do AI locally, you wouldn't buy one of these. Doesn't have enough storage, doesn't have enough RAM. But most people are not going to do local AIs. So.
Right.
Well, it'll do whatever the Apple Intelligence model is.
It'll do Apple Intelligence. I'm not saying that. Right. That's not AI. That's just
exactly
silliness.
Yeah. Well, and you have the Mac Studio for that too. So that's
we'll get to might as well get to that. So this is Well done, Apple, right? I mean, in every
Yeah.
respect, except the max memory is 24 gigs, right? It doesn't go higher than that.
Yeah, but it's a MacBook Air. I mean, that's
an Air.
the argument is like if you need to go above what the Air delivers, you should get a MacBook Pro, and they start at a lower price than they ever have because they have that M4 model, which is a lot less of a sad second citizen than it was back then.
Right.
I should say this is also the thing where they after I think the Studio Display came out and everybody kind of gave them stick for the camera, the center stage camera they put in there, and with the iMac and MacBook Pro last fall, they started putting 12 megapixel ultra wides in as their webcams, and they followed that up here. They're not all exactly the same. Like the iMac camera doesn't look like the MacBook Pro camera exactly, and the MacBook Pro camera doesn't look like the MacBook Air camera exactly, but they're all a cut above what was there before. And because it's an ultra wide that does center stage, even if you don't want to use center stage, it means you can use the little interface now to kind of zoom it around and pan it and get the exact shot you want in the webcam. So an upgraded webcam, like everybody's on a Zoom call. Everybody's on something like that.
And you don't need more than 1080p for any of that.
Right. You don't need, so they've got this 12 megapixel thing that then they can slice and dice, and it does look better, especially in low light where the old camera didn't do as well. This one does a little bit better. All of them look good in good lighting, but in bad lighting, which is where most video conferences happen, it's better. So that's the other major thing, other than just bumping the chip from M3 to M4. The major thing that happened here that I think people might care about, other than that one little color option and the price, is that the webcam's better. And it is. So that's good.
Hey, focus up. That is what I said to Hands on Tech when we looked at the relaunch. It is time for us to focus on one topic at a time and make sure we're answering that question. I am answering that question as thoroughly as possible. If you are a member of Club TWiT, you can watch the video version of this show completely ad-free. Of course, listen to the audio version ad-free. If you're not a member, the show will still be available to you in both ways. You can watch the video on YouTube with ads, or you can watch the audio as you always have. Listen to the audio as you always have in our feeds. In any case, you gotta tune in to Hands on Tech, because I guarantee there's going to be a question you're going to want to have the answer to. And from time to time, I also review a gadget, a gizmo, or something of the sort. You gotta check out Hands on Tech, and I can't wait to get your question.